Hello, fellow stargazers, and thanks for joining me on this video about the Libra Solar Eclipse. I am a bit under the weather today, so this video might be shorter than normal, but it's very important to talk about. Eclipses always are, because they correlate with big worldly events that seemingly come out of the blue, and also big events in our own personal lives. Now, how might this manifest amongst the collective? I don't know, but we can look at the archetypal field of potentials associated with Libra to make an educated guess or to surmise about how this may manifest. And on one level, Libra is the sign of law, justice, and fairness. So there might be some big developments in big legal cases in the world, like, for example, with Mr. Combs. It'll be interesting to see if there's any developments there during this eclipse. But, it's really a guessing game. It's a dubious enterprise, the predictive astrology. And for those of you who have, especially Sun, Moon, and Ascendant around 10 degrees of Libra, or really any of the cardinal signs, this eclipse will therefore be activating your own personal chart in a big way. And, although everything I say about Libra in this video is useful for anybody listening to contemplate the evolutionary lessons associated with this sign during this time, especially for those of you who have, again, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, or, a strong presence of planets around this degree of any of the cardinal signs, this video is tailor-made for you specifically. So pay close attention, because it's a big part of your evolutionary lessons now. If you don't know how to look at your personal chart, I do sell a 40-minute tutorial on my website. I'll put a link above if you want to check that out. Or you could always sign up for a personal birth chart reading if you really want to understand the core dynamics of your chart on a deep level. So diving in, you can see this eclipse is happening in 10 degrees of Libra. It's happening tomorrow, actually. I'm a little late to the party here in making this video, but this energy really applies over the next couple of weeks. And the Sun and Moon forming this eclipse is happening right next to Mercury in Libra, which is significant. And it's also in what's called a square aspect to Mars and Cancer. I mean, there's a lot going on in the sky, but I'd say those are the biggest things to focus on here. Now, there's a cliche that I've used on this channel from time to time, the calm before the storm. And I would characterize this eclipse as the calm before the storm. And I say that statement, and it's interesting because, Libra is the symbol of serenity, tranquility, and balance, which gives us some key clues on the core evolutionary intention of working with this symbol. So it is the sign of calmness, or at least that as a goal, to achieve more calmness within your spirit. But even if I say these words, the calm before the storm, I think to myself, is this a calm period of time in human history? I mean, we got two crazy wars going on. The political tensions are rising in various countries in the world. They're kind of bubbling up to this crescendo. But it is relative to where we're headed. If we compare the energy during this eclipse to the energy in a few weeks, it's much more calm. And that's because we have this impending Mars opposed Pluto, while Pluto finishes up its last degrees of Capricorn. Now, this opposition starts in a couple weeks. So the last, let's say, 3rd of October, it gets really, really strong, all the way through November, basically. So it's about 4 or 5 weeks where the collective will be experiencing peak intensity energy. Mars, the war god, opposed Pluto, the god of hell. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about that now, because I'll be covering that extensively over the next 2 or 3 videos. But let's just say it's going to be a wild ride. And I'm not trying to scare anybody, because, fear consciousness is not a really healthy place to be dwelling in, at least not as a habit. It calibrates at about 100 on the calibration scale of consciousness, from 1 to 1,000. And fear begets more fear, and suffering begets more suffering. So I'm not trying to scare anybody, but it is important to see what's coming, what's on the horizon astrologically, so that we can prepare for it. So in a sense, this Libra eclipse is a period of preparation for the peak intensity that's coming. This will happen periodically with the astrological energy. It will have this period of relative calm followed by a massive peak spike of this more volatile set of energies, which, Mars opposite Pluto definitely qualifies as such. How we prepare for what's to come is to contemplate deeply and really tap into the spirit of Libra. And the classic symbol for Libra is the platform balance, the scales. And we can take that in a lot of different directions. But one of the primary ones is creating an inner harmony, peace, and tranquility within your own consciousness, no matter what's going on in your external environment. The Libran goal is to make a perpetual peace treaty with chaos. Imagine some advanced mystic or guru in the world who's like truly advanced. Even in the external environment in which they're currently operating, even if it's hellfire and brimstone, the advanced mystic can stay utterly surrendered and present in that moment and experience calm even in a very, tumultuous situation. Imagine this global flood and there's a 1,000-foot wave and the mystic just looks at it and just kind of raises its arm in surrender as it waits for this transition to the next world, the life between lives, and doesn't really fight against that which it has no control, fight against the inevitable. It just accepts, it surrenders. So this is a state, this imagery I'm using here, is a state of peak calm, utterly in the present moment, connected to the divine, even in an environment where sometimes we experience peak intensity. I'm using an extreme example here, very hard to attain that. In fact, very few actually do. But if we look at the high road for Libra, it is about that. It's like, what do I have to do to increase the tranquility within my own heart and within my own mind? And the moon in astrology represents heart. Mercury represents mind. Even the sun is associated with the head space on a certain level because its function is ego and identity and self-image. So how can I create harmony with my thoughts and feelings during a time where there feels like there is a lot of imbalances in the world? And regardless of those imbalances, how can I remain balanced and healthy within myself? And there's many Libran ways of doing that. For starters, Libra is fundamentally a relationship-based sign. It's known as the lover archetype, and it's ruled by the planet Venus, the goddess of love. So we might, for a moment, consider the harmony and balance in our close relationships. We're talking about the inner concentric rings of relationships. We all know how important a hug can be in a time of difficulty. It can really bring us to that serenity within. So it's about cultivating harmony in our relationships during this time is really important to connect deeply with people in our lives. But, and there is a but here because the south node of the moon, that's what makes us an eclipse. The south node of the moon is near the sun and moon. And the south node is that which we want to grow beyond, that which we want to not fall into the darkness of that sign, but rather try to express the higher octave expression of this symbolism. So whenever the nodes are around, specifically the south node of the moon, we want to at least point to the darker potentials of Libra. And when we put this in a relationship context, we consider that, and some people who have strong Libra in their chart will nod their heads with me when I say this, but one of the dark sides of Libra, or the potentials of Libra, is too much compromise, too much self-sacrifice under the banner of, I don't want to rock the boat. Let's keep things copacetic here. Let's acquiesce to the pressures of the other person. So, Libra, of all the signs on the darker side, does have this more self-sacrificial side of too much compromise, which can lead to resentment and sometimes contempt. So yes, it's about creating harmony in our relationships during this time, but also simultaneously not compromising too much of our own needs in the equation, and sometimes needing to set healthy boundaries. And this really speaks to, the Mars square, the solar eclipse. Mars is the god of war. It's a strong, assertive, sort of masculine energy. Here it is in the sign of the mother, Cancer. And mothers or fathers for that matter, the nurturing instinct is to protect the children. Well, the warrior's instinct is to protect the children too, or to protect the weak and defenseless. So this has a strong mama bear or papa bear energy. And there's a ferocity to the mama bear sometimes, and sometimes that's needed. And this really speaks to the friction between the square between Mars and Libra, because Libra likes to acquiesce, likes to be the peacekeeper, likes to be the olive brancher. And sometimes that can be challenging while simultaneously self-protecting and also protecting others. So it's about trying to find a healthy balance between the two. On another level, circling right back to the beginning, Libra is the sign of balance. We can consider the balance between opposing ideas. Irony, ambiguity, and paradox suffuse the human world. And there's no sign that knows that instinctually as much as Libra, the archetype of the judge. Libran people out there have a superpower of recognizing that two well-intended people can perceive the same thing in very different ways, and to sit comfortably with paradox. Now, during this time, it's very healthy to consider that which you don't believe, the other side of the spectrum. So let's say, for example, here's a paradox: love versus freedom. These are not always natural bedmates, So some people have a more fierce independent streak. Other people might have relationships as their primary aspect of their life, and sometimes that can create codependent relationships. So every individual is a little different, and you can really understand who you are based on an analysis of your own personal birth chart. What are your natural gifts, your talents, but also some of your blinders. But if you're more of an individualistic person, it's a good time to contemplate your partnerships in your life during this time and to deepen those and to focus more on fostering the growth of those relationships. Again, finding balance between that which you are not and that which you are. And then on the other side, maybe relationships is the primary component of your life and you really focus on. Well, maybe it's about seeking out more freedom and individuation in your life during this time, or at least to contemplate these ideas. And it's not really to become that which you're not. It's about trying to find balance between what you are and what you're not, if that makes sense. Here's another example: action versus reflection. Now, extroverts are more action-oriented. They take action, they reflect, and then take action again. Introverts reflect, take action, and then reflect again. So if you're a more extroverted person, this is a great time to practice reflection during this time, to find balance within yourself, a balance between opposing ways of existing. And they're not exactly opposites, but, there is tension between these two things, and collectively they represent a yin-yang wholeness. Conversely, if you're more introverted and you're much more reflective person, let's say, this is a great time to practice action, okay? To find balance within yourself. Another classic paradox is truth versus kindness. They're both great values, but they also naturally exist in tension with each other. If you're more of a truth-sayer person and you really value that aspect of yourself, maybe it's time to temper that a bit with more kindness during this time. Conversely, if you're a very kind, compassionate person, and sometimes you self-edit a fierce truth that needs to be said, maybe it's time to practice some of that fierce truth during this time and just have faith that you have enough compassion to say it eloquently with caveats and disclaimers, to take out some of the perceived venom that you might have about speaking a truth and setting a strong boundary in your life. Now, as far as Mercury goes, Mercury is the communication planet, and here it is in the sign of balance. This is a great time to practice graceful social relations and practice the communicative skill of building rapport with other humans. The planet of communication, the sign of relationship. No matter how different other people may be from you, it's like, okay, let's connect with them. Let's develop rapport, and let's try to have a more cerebral understanding about their points of view, even though it might be very different than our own. And this is a great time to combat any sort of dogmatism or fanaticism within yourself. And this is interesting because it's a very heated political time in the world. Because if you think for a moment about a literal fanatic, in the extreme literal definition of a fanatic, they're tensed, they're crazed, they're tight, and they're in this state of hypervigilance to try to explain away the facts that go against what it is they believe. And that state of being tensed, that's the opposite of the high road for Libra, which again is calm. Again, there's different viewpoints in the world that can operate simultaneously. And through mercurial conversation, we connect with opposing ideas, not to adopt those ideas, but to have a deeper level of cognitive, objective understanding about that point of view. And here's another key concept: the harmony, the balance of communication. Let's say you're more of a talker than a listener, and you consider yourself that way. Well, this is a great time to practice listening, because healthy, balanced communication is a two-way street. Or maybe you're a tremendous listener, and that's one of your superpowers. This is a great time for you to practice the opposite, to practice more assertive communication and try to inch your way towards more of a 50-50 split during this time. And it's not necessarily that you'll become 50-50 split with these various things I'm talking about as the goal. It's just making a shift into practice, and just to create a little bit, because this is where you have the breakthroughs of understanding. When you go beyond that which you are, it can be quite uncomfortable, but it's in those periods of discomfort that we can have tremendous growth spurts. And that's what Libra is indicating here. Mercury also represents the mind and the brain, literally, and our thinking processes. So how can I generate more calm within my own mind? How can I calm my thoughts? So if your brain is going, like a turbo booster during this time, it's like, how can I create more serenity in my thought process? My favorite activity to do to generate this is meditation, as many of you know. And I created a meditation for this event. It's called Inner Sanctuary Meditation, where you can create your own inner sanctuary within your mind. And actually, the Rosicrucians, they have beautiful teachings out there, and this is the first meditation they teach, or a variant of it, and they call it the Inner Sanctuary Meditation. And the Rosicrucians really believe in the power of this specific meditation, because it's the first one they teach to all their students. So as we can see, it's okay, peace, calm, tranquility. I use those words a lot in this reading, and we stylistically discussed very different Libran methods to do that. But these are all rivers that flow into a great breakthrough during this time, in this calm before the storm. And stay tuned for the next videos, because we will really dive into this whole Mars-Pluto opposition and what it means on a personal level, but also for the collective. These are the core evolutionary intentions, with the goal being to expand our consciousness. Thanks for listening.